Good evening and welcome to Town Hall. This is the Green Scissors and Supercuts panel discussion. My name is Japheth. I've been filling your email inboxes with invitation spam for the last couple of weeks, and I've been hoping for rain because nothing brings attendance down like a sunny afternoon in Seattle. The first order of business is a little active civic participation, and I want everyone to take out their cell phones, turn off the ringer, put it back in your pocket. Now I think I'm going to roll back. Remember a month ago, before we had a hurricane, before there's an earthquake, when the biggest weather concern in Washington, D.C. was the record heat waves? During those hot days of July, Congress was deadlocked over the debt ceiling vote. As the debate raged in 100-degree heat, the United States risked defaulting on our national obligations for the first time in history. Though this crisis was politically manufactured, Congress was actually sort of doing its job. These political theatrics got us to pay attention to issues that are normally left up to lobbyists, interest groups, and policy wonks. When Standard & Poor's downgraded the U.S. credit rating, we all sat up and took notice. Suddenly, terms like tax expenditures and last-in, first-out accounting practices that used to result in glazed eyes and vacant stares now invite conversation, discussion, and spirited debate. Maybe it took a little dysfunction in Congress and a credit rating downgrade to wake us up, but here we are, wide awake and paying attention. We know these things matter. We know that the national budget is both a fiscal and a moral document. We know that the dry columns of numbers have a human face, and the choices we make about taxes and the budget reflect our values as individuals and as a nation. That's why we're here tonight. Before we get to our panel, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who helped make this possible on such short notice. I'd like to thank our panelists for being available, knowledgeable, and willing to engage in thoughtful dialogue with people who may not share their views. Ryan, Paul, Andy, and Ross, thank you. I'd like to thank Town Hall. They're normally closed during August, but when I mentioned this topic, they said, "That's what we're here for. We'll make it happen." The same thing happened when I mentioned it to a City Club board member. He said, "That's what we're here for. Let's make it happen." So thank you, Town Hall. Thank you, City Club, for co-presenting the event. I'd also like to thank the Washington Bus and the Washington chapter of the Sierra Club for helping to promote this event to their membership. And finally, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters. The League is a linchpin of democratic process, helping register, educate, and inform voters of all ages and political stripes, encouraging participations in election and beyond. And I'm particularly grateful because they connected me with Ellen Barton, who will be our moderator tonight. Ellen earned her law degree at University of Puget Sound in 1986 before it became Seattle U. She worked as a litigator with local legend City Attorney Mark Sidran and U.S. Attorney Mike McKay. So she's no stranger to spirited debate. She currently practices with Hertog and Koster and serves on the board of the Seattle King County League of Women Voters and has been an active member for over a decade. She's a strong advocate for public health and environmental issues. Like everyone here tonight, Ellen stepped up with this with just a few days' notice to tackle a difficult and contentious subject. So please join me in thanking her for her effort and dedication.
Thank you. I'm going to give a brief introduction to our topic, and then, of course, we'll turn it over to the panel to answer questions. There are two motivations for our discussion tonight. There's the 2011 Green Scissors Report, of which I hope you all have a copy, and if you don't, you can pick one up at the front desk, and the Joint Select Committee on Deficit Reduction, the so-called Super Committee. The Super Committee was created by Congress as part of the recent deal reached over the debt ceiling. It consists of 6 Democrats and 6 Republicans. And our Senator, Patty Murray, is the chair of the committee. The Super Committee, pardon? Yeah, I don't know. The thing I read said chair, but possibly co-chair. The Super Committee is tasked with finding $1.5 trillion in deficit reductions over the next 10 years. And they have to do this by November 23rd, to be voted on by the full House and Senate by December 23rd. If the supercommittee does not accomplish this task, then there will be across the board $1.2 trillion in cuts, split evenly between defense and non-defense spending. The Green Scissors report, which is based on consensus, provides a potential template for forging a win-win solutions to the budgetary crisis. Green Scissors has, for more than 16 years, exposed subsidies and programs that both harm the environment and waste taxpayer dollars. The report is the result of consensus reached by 4 diverse groups: Taxpayers for Common Sense, the Heartland Institute, Friends of the Earth, and Public Citizen. The basis for these diverse groups' agreement is the belief that we can address the country's budgetary and environmental problems by tackling wasteful government spending that harms the environment. Green Scissors 2011 identifies more than $380 billion in wasteful government spending that it recommends be eliminated. The report focuses on 4 specific areas of subsidies: energy, agriculture, transportation, and land and water management. Energy subsidies include tax breaks for oil and gas companies, the clean coal technology, nuclear power, corn ethanol, and other alternative fuels. According to the report, agricultural subsidies for commodity crops, corn, cotton, wheat, rice, and soybeans, should be reduced by 80%. The report also suggests eliminating or reducing the crop insurance program. This would impact Central Washington fruit growers who rely upon this government program. Transportation projects that the report concludes we would be better off without include subsidies to small airports and the hybrid vehicle tax credit, which benefits less efficient vehicles rather than the Prius, or cars like the Prius. Also on the hit list is the replacement project of the I-5 bridge between Vancouver and Portland, which had a cost of about $3.5 billion. Land and water management policies that benefit commercial interests at the expense of taxpayers include the failure of the federal government to charge adequately for grazing rights, mineral extraction, timber harvesting, and oil drilling on public lands. The water section looks at the Army Corps of Engineer projects that serve little or no national interest, are not economically justified, and have serious negative environmental consequences. The 2011 Green Scissors report provides a starting point to the conversation about cutting the federal deficit while at the same time maintaining our national priorities and commitments. I will shortly give a brief introduction of our panelists tonight and allow them to give brief opening statements. They were selected because they represent a cross-section of political viewpoints. I will then ask them questions that have been pre-selected from inquiries, comments, and conversations we've had leading up to tonight. After approximately 45 minutes, we will open up the floor to audience questions for 20 minutes. You will need to come up to the microphone here, state your name, and then briefly state your question. And you should ask just one question at a time. Since it's likely we will not get to everybody's questions, the panelists have very graciously agreed to stay behind tonight, so you may come up and talk to them afterwards. For each question posed, the panelists will have 3 minutes to answer. There's a volunteer here with a stopwatch and a red card. When the card comes up, first it'll be at 2 minutes, and then it'll be at 30 seconds, so you'll know when you're getting near the end. The panelists may also direct questions to other panelists, and I hope that they do so. Since you already have a copy of the report and can read it at your leisure, we won't spend a lot of time tonight discussing its content except for the introduction that I just gave. Instead, we're going to focus on the greater context of the looming deficit, the divided Congress, and the challenge of meeting our fiscal obligations while pursuing our national interests. We hope that our diverse group of panelists tonight can find common ground, or at least have a spirited debate about how we, as a country, should choose to invest and shape the economic landscape for decades to come. The questions that have been posed, we have tried to combine them. We've tried so we can address all the issues we'd like to in this short amount of time. The debt, the deficit, taxes, finding common ground, and ensuring our government reflects these common interests. So let me start with Ryan Alexander on my left here. She's with Taxpayers for Common Sense. She joined Taxpayers for Common Sense as president in November of 2006 after serving on the board for more than 7 years. Over the past 2 decades, Ryan has served as a nonprofit advocate, manager, funder, and consultant to Taxpayers for Common Sense. Previously, she served as executive director of the Common Cause Education Fund, the research and education affiliate of Common Cause. As a consultant to foundations and advocacy organizations, a foundation program officer, and a litigation attorney. She co-founded the Appalachian Center for the Economy and the Environment, which she continues to chair, and sits on the board of directors of the Project on Government Oversight. Ryan received a bachelor's degree with honors from Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, a law degree from the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and was awarded a National Associate for Public Interest Law Equal Justice Fellowship. Next to my left is Paul Guppy with the Washington Policy Center. Paul Guppy is a graduate of Seattle University and holds graduate degrees from Claremont Graduate University and the London School of Economics. He worked for 12 years in the U.S. Congress as Chief of Staff and Legislative Director. He is currently the Vice President for Research at the Washington Policy Center, where he writes extensively on tax policy, public finance, and other public issues. And he is the editor of the Policy Guide to Washington State. He and his wife live in Seattle with their 4 children. Washington Policy Center is an independent nonprofit 501c3 research and education organization based in Seattle. To his left is Andy Nicholas, policy analyst with the Bipartisan Policy Center. Prior to joining the Bipartisan Policy Center, Andy worked
Sorry, that's the Washington State Budget and Policy Center.
Oh, okay,
That's
sorry.
a national organization.
Washington State Budget and Policy Center?
Yes.
Excuse me. Prior to joining the Washington State Budget and Policy Center, Andy worked as a research associate at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a nonpartisan think tank based in Washington, D.C. At that organization, he co-authored numerous reports and performed extensive research on state fiscal policy. Additionally, Andy taught English in, is it Yangzhou, China? Yangzhou, China, and worked several legislative sessions in the Washington State Legislature. He holds a BA in Political Science from Central Washington University and a Master of Public Policy from American University School of Public Affairs. And to Andy's left is Ross McFarlane of Climate Solutions. Ross is Senior Advisor for Climate Solutions, which is a regional clean energy nonprofit that is dedicated to practical and profitable solutions to our energy and climate crisis. Ross has more than 25 years' experience as an advocate on public policy and environmental issues. He's a graduate of Pomona College and has a JD, a Juris Doctor degree, from the University of Washington School of Law. Now that you know who they are, we're going to give them a few minutes, up to about 5 minutes, to tell us a little bit about your organization and your perspective on the issue that's confronting the supercommittee, including your characterization of the problem that the supercommittee must solve. And we'll start with Ross.
Hi, thank you so much. So Climate Solutions, as mentioned, is an organization focused on developing practical and profitable solutions to our climate and energy crises. We're obviously focused on a piece, but an important piece of this debate, which is around the recommendations on energy, both fossil fuels and clean energy. And I want to just start by saying that there's some things in this report, which I hope you'll all look at, which we strongly agree with, and some things that we do have issue with. Starting with the things that we strongly agree with, we couldn't agree more that we need to be cutting unnecessary, long-standing subsidies for the most profitable corporations in the history of capitalism, and that's the oil and gas and coal companies. Profits have increased to record levels, $70 billion in the first half of this year alone for the top 5 oil companies. And the justifications for keeping those subsidies in place haven't materialized. There's no increase in jobs in America. In fact, offshoring continues. So, we couldn't agree more that we need to be looking at